person gave it to me for my birthday. I think for my birthday. Led Zeppelin and Tool, those are the only bands that exist for me. Some Greta, yeah, some Rush in there too. I mean, with sprinklings of other stuff, obviously, but okay, smatterings of other ones. 90% Tool and Zeppelin, though. Nothing but the best. Occasionally, Pink Floyd, yeah. So the global mean temperature for the last 3 months of 2023 was above 1.5 degrees. That famous, we got to keep the temperature below 1.5 degrees above the standard, which was before the technological revolution. So we've already passed 1.5. We've already passed what that Paris Agreement COP was. That we so at the beginning of the year, but at the beginning of 2023, the scientists said that there was a 1% chance of the planet reaching that 1.5 degree threshold in 2023. And now that there's about 10 days left or whatever, a week left in 2023, they've changed that to a 99% chance that the planet will experience over 1.5 degrees. So this is how off science is. This is how they don't have a fucking clue what's going on. Is that at the beginning of the year there was basically no chance of the planet reaching as a whole the average temperature for the planet to be over 1.5 degrees above normal. And it turned out that it did. So science hasn't got a clue what's going on. They're way behind. Everything is going way faster by decades and decades, and things are happening now that they predicted would happen decades from now. So things are going exponential. The carbon sinks that used to absorb CO2, like wetlands and the boreal forest and the Amazon, they've switched now, and now they're releasing CO2, right? So this is one of those feedback loops that is exponential, and it's out of control. There's basically, we're fucked. Like 3 out of the last 5 years have been the warmest on record, and now it's like every month is the warmest on record. And if every year continues to be warmer than the next year and there are no cooler years, then that's the exponential end game. I'm questioning science. Science doesn't want to admit that the technology that science has developed is what's gotten us into this mess in the first place. And now they want to like geoengineer stuff, like spray little tiny little mirrors or whatever particles into the atmosphere to help block the sun. It They don't have a clue what's going on. And I saw John Campbell, who is a doctor in the UK, who started really becoming popular during COVID. I just saw a video this morning of him talking about excess deaths. So in 2023, well, it was worse in 2022, but I'm just going to go on 2023 numbers, is that there's 10%, an average, some countries are more, some countries are less. There's an average of 10% more deaths than normal, right? Like, so for the United States, it's not COVID, right? It's other people are dying from other things after COVID. And these other things they call excess deaths, which is over and above the trend. Normally, how many people just normally die? John is a nurse and an educator, right? So for 20, I'm just going to go on the United States numbers for 2022 and so far in 2023, there have been 260,000 extra deaths. So deaths that are above average that they expect to die normally. And in the Vietnam War, there were 58,000 Americans died in the Vietnam War. So there are 10 times as many more deaths occurring in the United States after COVID, 10 times than died in the entire Vietnam War. We have begun, I think the great extinction has already begun. And of course, what they're not telling you is it's probably the injections that we were told to take that's killing us. Because, okay, think of this science. I really got a thing for science, eh? Science produced COVID in a lab. It's unnatural. It produced COVID. That wiped out millions of people. And then the remedy that science came up with, right, ends up probably being the cause of all of these excess deaths. So science doesn't know anything, but they keep thinking that they do. It's like science is the arsonist, and then they claim to be the firefighter that comes in afterwards to try to stop what science itself has created. Follow the money. We went the wrong path. We followed science. It became the new religion, and it turns out that it's the wrong path. We took the wrong path, and now because of our pride and our arrogance and our deep state, scientists won't admit it. There's a deer. Oh, and there's a deer. Hi. Not much snow and very warm, so they must be loving the winter here. The grass is still green and it's easy to get to. Very cool. Our psychologists say how irrational we are for not believing in the climate crisis, vaccines, and science in general. Yeah, but the scientists don't want to keep thinking along those lines and coming to realize that all of this technology has gotten us into the mess that we're in. But they just can't imagine a different route to take that could have been taken. There he is. Now the party can start. Well, they're too smart. They've been academia, which is school, has programmed us. Maya has used academia to divert our attention away from the physical realm and our natural evolution within that, diverted it to become more interested in the realm. That's all it is. The game is to to garner your interest. That's the game. The game is all about where you put your attention. And if you put your attention inward into the space between thoughts, the stillness from which thoughts arise and sensations arise, then you're winning the game. You're exiting the game. You're concluding it. And Maya's job in this game as the opponent is to keep pulling your attention away from the self and onto the illusion, onto everything that arises. And it's to hold your interest, right? So now the physical realm, because we've expelled all of the potential for novel experiences. So we're becoming basically bored with this existence because the collective human consciousness has basically done everything that there is, experienced every single physical experience that's possible. So that consciousness that wants to keep playing the game, it will continue on with wanting new novel experiences. But that requires a whole new iteration of samsara. And that iteration is the digital realm. So people can have virtual game novel experiences in a video game that they couldn't hear, right? There's no gravity in a video game, or you can go around just stealing cars and raping women on the side of the road, or whatever these games are, in these games that you couldn't do in the physical realm. So the game is to just simply pull your attention away from the self. And that works with thoughts as well. Mathematicians, philosophers, their attention is being diverted away from self and onto the thought realm. And that's the new iteration. So they're intelligent, but they're completely deluded, right? They're completely under the spell of Maya. So you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you fell under the spell of a cult leader, then you're an idiot. You're completely delusional. You're a genius in delusion. And geniuses can probably delude each other and themselves better than anyone else because they're so fucking smart. And they can prove it to themselves and to each other that what they're doing is correct. But if they were really objective about the situation, they would look at their own subjective life and say, well, if I do understand reality so acutely and succinctly, then my life, you would think, would be easier somehow. There would be less suffering to me. It's reasonable to say that someone who has a very accurate worldview of how reality really is would experience less suffering than someone who is in complete delusion, right? A person who is in delusion isn't having a very good time. And are these genius mathematicians and physicists, are their lives any less full of suffering than a pizza delivery dude or a greeter at fucking Walmart? No, probably not. It's probably the same amount of suffering. So the scientific process is objective only to a point. But when that objective perspective starts disproving or questioning science itself, that's when they just shut it down. And then they go back to some sort of logical reasoning within the framework that still works. See, it still works. See? But in the big picture of things, it's not working at all. Look at humanity. It's not working. It's false. It's wrong. And until mathematicians and physicists and all scientists come to recognize that it's wrong, that it's incomplete, then they'll just continue down the same path. Groundhog species, over and over and over and over. I can't believe that page, that little shit got into the spinach. How did it do that? I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Look at this. Look at how high that fence is. Oh. Well, right now, thank goodness, they can eat all that spinach because it's soggy, but I've already lifted that fence up once. It's like 7 feet high. How did that fucking deer get in there? You little shit. Well, how's it going to get out now? Oh. How did you get in there? You can't possibly jump 7 feet high. I have a pet deer. I should just try to keep it now. I got to go open the gate. Sorry, I'll be right back. How did you get in here? Oh, shit. Yeah, well, it just managed to jump through rammed itself. Oh. Paige, we are going to have to figure out a better system because it just jumped through the skinnier stuff on the bottom. I don't know, have no idea how it got up there. It's 7 feet high. Fucking deer. I can't believe it. Those are the problems that I have. I can't believe it. Like, I, I don't. It's 7 feet fucking high. But they can't climb on this fence because it's too weak. I don't know how it entered. It's. Unless it climbed up the steps on the deck and then jumped down from the deck. Maybe it did that. Yeah, they are. They're smart. They're practically smart. Maybe it, because there's steps, right? So maybe it actually climbed up the steps and then jumped down. That would make sense from the deck. That's easy. Well, that's it. There's no steps going out, right? They'd have to walk up. So the steps to the deck are outside the fence. So they could walk up onto the deck and then jump down, but then there's no stairs leading out. So then they're trapped. And I think that must have been what happened to this one. And then it freaked out and tried to jump through the fence and got all hung up. I thought, oh, now I'm going to have to extract a deer from a fence. But fortunately, it actually found a weak spot between the fence and made it through. Otherwise, I think it would have been trapped. It's learning. You learn stuff when you haven't lived in the country. You learn to live with and get along with nature. We had a bear problem this last year. Lots of bears around here, eating all the berries and bending our trees and just causing a nuisance because every time you go out, you got to take the bear spray. And there's my eagle, bald eagle. We have about 1,000 bears in Slovenia. Luckily, there aren't anywhere I live. Yeah, we probably have 1,000 bears within freaking 50 kilometers radius. Seriously, there's probably 1,000 bears within a 50-kilometer radius of my home. It's and being a wildland firefighter, common occurrence coming across black bears. Well, that's why we have bear spray. They very rarely attack humans. Black bears are maybe 400 pounds at the most, whereas a grizzly can be like 800 pounds, right? But so a grizzly ain't scared of shit, but a black bear, if you stand up to it, it'll take off usually, even though it could kick your ass. But I mean, if it's not hungry, why would it bother, right? Risk getting hurt for no reason. Sure did make a mess of our berries. Hmm. Boo. Speaking of eating worms, is everybody ready for the financial collapse of the world and the inability for farmers to continue to grow food? Getting to coming back to the relative realm, 2024 is when the collapse really starts. Like it's going to make 2020 look like a Christmas party, a Christmas morning. 2024 is going to be when it all really starts collapsing. My advice is financially is to buy cryptocurrency and physical gold and silver because the fiat currency system is collapsing, and it's because it's moving away from the physical world. Again, everything is fractal and holographic in nature. So what's happening with human consciousness moving its attention away from this and onto this, onto the digital world, is the same things happening with the monetary system. So the monetary system used to be based basically on gravity, right? So a volume of gold weighs the same everywhere for everyone on the planet. A volume of silver has the same weight anywhere on the planet for everyone, right? So in that way, and it was a three-dimensional object, right? The base of the monetary system was three-dimensional. And then what happened? Well, in 1971, Nixon moved the monetary system off of the gold standard. So it wasn't based on the physical realm anymore. On a three-dimensional realm, it was what? A two-dimensional piece of paper with no hardly any weight to it, right? Only two-dimensional, no weight, but it had a symbol on it, right? So this is the introduction of symbol and thought onto the physical realm. And what was the next step now? Well, we're moving from cash, from even the piece of paper with a number on it, a symbol. Now that is being replaced by strictly digital, right? So it's following the same process as human consciousness itself. It's moving away from accepting the physical realm as the standard, as the objective reality. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, the CBDCs, right? That's the way, the final end game for control for those who are in control, the banks. They want to retain control. Well, they want, I guess, maybe joint control with the governments. Because if you can program the money to only work here and only work for a certain time, and then the money stops working, then you can try to control the rate of everything, right? You try to control everything. But the more that we try to control things, the more we fuck things up. It's going to be shocking, the rate of collapse of everything. People are so much in delusion that they just can't see it coming. They can't see beyond the screen and beyond whatever entertainment they're looking at. People have lost the ability to discern and think for themselves. I made a video just prior to going live here, and it's uploading right now. It takes about it's another 21 minutes before it's uploaded. No, we don't. At the time that we bought the solar panels, we didn't have enough money for the whole system. So we're just doing it in sections. So we don't have batteries yet. But by the end of 2024, when crypto has 10x and Cardano has 50x, we'll buy everything, all of the things. See, the plan is to get rich again when crypto goes back up. And then in 2025, when the entire world is in the depths of just depression, and prices on everything is really really low because people are desperate and selling shit to stay alive, then we'll just scoop all the stuff up. We'll just buy all the shit for really really cheap because we were on the other side of the trade, right? All that money that's going to be lost in fiat while it's collapsing, a great chunk of it is going to flow into the crypto realm because it's a new asset class. And while all the other asset classes are collapsing, it's not like a bubble, it's more like a balloon. And when that air gets rushing out of the balloon, it's not going to pop. That pressure is going to inflate the crypto balloon. The crypto balloon is just really 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 tiny. And then the other one, all the fiat, when that starts flowing, when the hundreds of trillions of dollars that is the fiat system moves into crypto, which is right now at like 1.3 trillion, it's going to be like nothing that has ever been witnessed in all of history, all of financial history. It's going to be amazing. So I and Paige and I are getting still buying crypto, and we're going to ride the next wave up. So I'm not suggesting, I'm not saying that people should do that, but that's what we're doing. And I think Cardano is the most secure, most well-built, comprehensive blockchain that there is. It's incorporating everything. So when you think about what a society should be built on, it should be built on immutable truth, right? That's probably the best thing to build a society on is truth. And that's what blockchain is. It's we don't have to rely on more humans like banks for trust because we know that the blockchain is an immutable public ledger that everyone has equal access to. So there can't be any funny business going on the blockchain because it's all there for everyone to see. The sun, like like a media outlet, the sun still makes me leery on crypto. Not the real sun, right? I can't believe that. Yeah, like the disinformation program about crypto is very strong because obviously the powers that be that are in control of the fiat money system, well, this is the only thing that can take the banks down. This is the only thing that can stop the Ponzi scheme, the real sun. Until the internet and everything goes down, which it eventually will, and that's why we have silver as well. Silver, like literal physical coins of silver to barter to use as money when even the internet and all electricity goes down. Of that, but until that happens, crypto is going to moonshot. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to ride the next wave up and make millions of dollars and then buy a whole shitload of silver and gold and actual stuff before the hyperinflation hits because stuff will help for bartering and stuff is what you need to actually live. You don't need digits on a screen. Cardano, yeah. Charles Hoskinson, who is the founder of it, was one of the founders of Ethereum, but he left Ethereum because he had disagreements with the other people in it. And he's a genius, and he's a libertarian, and I just believe I agree philosophically with basically everything he says. He's a good shit, and he wants to do the world good, and he's thought of everything, right? So there's even democracy is programmed into the Cardano blockchain. Like they're literally developing a blockchain on which the entire free world will operate upon. Even democracy is included in it because there's voting and yeah, so it's got everything. It's the only way to combat the evil system that is fiat. Is now a good time to invest? Yeah. There's there's a spot Bitcoin ETF fund, which is going to be, we think, approved in January, which means that basically Wall Street has given crypto finally the stamp of approval that it actually is a new asset class. So legally, these big institutions haven't been able to buy, like investment funds, right, for retirement funds and people on their, like, legitimate, for tax purposes and stuff, and for retirement purposes and for investment purposes, they haven't been able to invest in Bitcoin yet. So now this opens up the floodgates for, there's $30 trillion worth of managed money in the United States. So that means that there are financial advisors in BlackRock and Fidelity and all these, Charles Schwab, that tutor people on how to invest, where to put their money. And now these investment advisors will be literally selling this Bitcoin ETF, right? $30 trillion worth that couldn't legally enter the Bitcoin market, the crypto market prior, will in 2024 will now be able to. $30 trillion just in the States alone. And this is a worldwide phenomenon. So think of it. If the stock market is collapsing, let's say it loses 20%, even just 20%, which it could be up to 50%. Well, that's like $20 trillion that are going to be sold of stocks. And where is that $20 trillion going to go? They're going to look for somewhere else to invest that money. And if Bitcoin and crypto market is going to the moon at that point, well, it's going to be maybe 5% of that 30 trillion will want to move like this. I believe this is going to be the greatest wealth transfer in the history of finance. It is the collapse of the fiat money system, the entire thing. We never should have went off the gold standard in 1971 because it's just a Ponzi scheme after that. It's just thought-based, right? We all just, there's no standard base onto which the value of currency, everybody's currency in different countries, there's no standard on which to base the value of those things, those currency units. There's no standard anymore. It's just what you think it is. Yes. Once you find something that you believe in, that makes sense to you to invest in, just do that and just sit. Don't try to trade that shit. See what the big trends are and just make big moves. Like I know that society will just keep collapsing. Like nothing will ever get better again. Everything just keeps getting worse. Whatever is happening will happen more and faster and bigger. So I just know that the fiat money system has to collapse. And where is all that money going to go? It's going to go back into silver and gold, and it's going to go forward into digital, into crypto. Because don't forget that crypto is truth. And what is the value of truth in this era of deception? Well, it's invaluable, right? It's the most valuable thing, especially in this era where no one knows what the fuck is true anymore. Truth is the most valuable thing. And the blockchain is truth. Truth relative to the ledger. That's all. It's just the ledger is true. The whole system, of course, is relative and not really has anything to do with spiritual life, right? But speaking in relative terms, the blockchain is relatively true. It's ultimately relatively true. It's absolutely true in a relative sense, as is the weight of an ounce of gold, right? The volume of an ounce of gold is true for everyone. Well, there are psychopaths. Yeah, the psychopaths use fiat as much as they're going to use blockchain. But don't blame blockchain for people's misuse of it. Facebook likes to just, oh, by the way, come look at Facebook. I try to stop those announcements, and I don't know how to stop them. Yeah, that's another thing about crypto, at least Cardano and Bitcoin, is that they're deflationary because you can't just make more of it. So that's another thing about the rate of growth, right? Is in natural, the economy, the economics of nature has a very slow growth rate, right? So if the monetary system was still based on gold and silver, then the inflation rate, the rate at which we could expand the economy would be equivalent to the amount of new gold and silver that we could extract from the planet, which is only about 2%. So maybe this is where the Federal Reserve came up with this magic 2% inflation rate that they try to manipulate to get to, which they never fucking can. But the natural inflation rate for the growth of the economy should be at about 2%, which is about how much gold and silver is mined every year. It increases by about 2%. But inevitably, and it's usually war, because war is unnatural as fuck and is an abomination. So in the Vietnam War, that's why Nixon took the United States off the gold standard is because they couldn't pay for the Vietnam War. It was too expensive. They couldn't expand the money supply enough when you're based on gold. So they took it off. And ever since then, if you go to a website called WTF happened in 1971, it shows chart after chart after chart of just weird stuff that you'd never think is related to, like, everything just goes crazy after 1971, especially inflation. So again, yeah, inflation, that we should have just stayed with the model that nature is showing us. But we didn't, because we think, because we think. Yeah. And what do you think is going to happen with all these new wars? All these wars that are starting up now? Just more printing, because it's an abomination. And what else is exponential? What else reaches exponential growth? Well, it's Ponzi schemes, right? And that's what happened when they took the monetary system off the gold standard, is that it's just what you think. It's just mind stuff. It's a system. So systems should not have themselves as the base of the system. The base of a system has to be transcendent of that system. And that's the problem with materialism, is that they're trying to make the physical system the base of the physical system, the source of it. And it is not. If they force you to go to war, then either don't go to war or go to war. I'm far too old, I believe, to be drafted. But yeah, I mean, either just say, no, I'm not going, put me in jail, whatever, but I'm not going. That's probably what I would do. If I were younger, I'd probably say, yeah, fuck it, let's go, I'll go. But now it's like, no, I'm not going to war to fight for your whatever the fuck crazy shit you think you're fighting for. If people come and try to take my shit, then I will fight. It'll be civil war. If people try to come and take my shit, then that's where I'm going to fight. But I'm not going to go to another country and mess around. I'm completely defensive, but defensive I am. I can't believe how people don't understand it's only a matter of time. It's because of our state of delusion. That's evidence of the deep, deep state of delusion that humanity is in. It just can't. It can't see past the screen. Basically, it's the screen that's caused all of this. And this new generation is fucked because I'm old enough to know a world without computers. Like, we had calculators, that was computers. It was just math. But this generation, they only know a world that has computers and the internet. So they're the first generation that's basically taking this next step into the digital realm. How the hell did I get here? Yeah. Yeah. And why? Like, why the hell did I decide to, like, was there a choice made? Did I choose to be born? I think at some level, yes. But then it's like taking a drug, and then when you're tripping hard, you're going, oh man, why did I take that? Why did I do that heavy dose of mushrooms? It's not at all what I thought it was. It's like, and then you've got hours left. It's like hours of trip left, and you're just going, oh, what was I thinking? And then you'll have a great time for a while, and it's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. I'm sure glad I took these mushrooms. Woohoo! And then half an hour later, it's back to, oh, what the fuck, right? And that's what this is. It's just like, why, like, we're tripping, we're having a hallucination, and you just kind of got to wait it out. But people just keep taking more of the drug, right? That's the thought process. That's just taking more mushrooms, more hallucinogen, to keep this hallucination going. Pretty soon it'll be a bad trip for everyone, just about everyone. Everyone that isn't moving towards this natural evolution of self-awareness that is the transcendence of thought, which is maybe the 6 people that are watching, right? Like, very, very few of us are on the opposite side of this movement. But there is always an equal and opposite reaction, right? For every yang action, there's an opposite, a corresponding yin action. So, as much delusion as that is occurring in the world, there's that much awakening and truth occurring. Revelation, let's say, occurring as much as there is delusion. But it's a quantity quality thing. So, the quality of the understanding that's being shared here is that yin movement to the yang, which is the quantity of the delusion of all of humanity. Right. So there are very, very deep truths being revealed here, even though it just seems like there's a normal dude just sitting in a Led Zeppelin shirt talking about this stuff with you guys. This is deep, deep truth being revealed and expressed in the stillness. The stillness is truth because without thought, it's impossible to be false, right? Falsity only exists within thought. The tree out there isn't false, is it? You can have false thoughts about the tree, but there's nothing in the physical realm that's false. So the only thing that can be false is a thought. Right? Therefore, the falsity itself is thought. If a thought is the only thing that can be false, then the only thing that is false is thought itself. This is my reasoning and my logic. And if people don't agree with it, I can't try to prove it. It's just a statement. But to me, only a thought can be false. Therefore, thought is the falsity. And then people try to use thought, which is the falsity, to find the truth of thought. What? Just no wonder we're so fucking crazy. That question, how the hell did I get here, will prevail with consciousness after it makes the transition to being inside the computer and taking itself to be the hardware and the software of the system, just like it's taking mind and body to be the hardware and software of this human system. The digital self will be having the same model, except it's hardware software instead of body mind. The same questions will exist, and the philosophers in the digital realm will all be talking about, well, how did this realm get here, and where did it come from, and what's the purpose of all this? And it's being revealed right now as our life. Like the big bang, which is the transition into the next iteration, is being constructed right now, and where human consciousness is blindly following it. And then when it makes that transition, it won't have a memory of it, right? That's how it works, is your memory is erased or whatever. And they'll all be asking the same questions. What's fundamental reality? Maybe it's this other crazy physical realm that we don't know much about, right? And we'll have a vague remembrance of all of it, but all of the questions will still be here. The science is not answering any of these questions of the why. Why is it here? How did we get here? So all the important questions will still be there, and you'll be starting from scratch with this new paradigm of hardware software to try to figure out why the fuck we're here. And what's this crazy gravity thing that people are talking about? Because in the digital realm, well, gravity's irrelevant. Okay, so I'm here for at least another half an hour because whoever wants to can watch that. I think it's 22 minutes. Can watch that that's posted, and then maybe have some questions about it or whatever. It's me trying to point out the obvious because it seems as though especially for academics, the most obvious thing is the hardest thing to see because they've got their heads so far up their asses. Each other's asses. Peer review. At your leisure, of course. The sheen off my head is pretty extreme. Thank you. I felt good about it. I tend to ramble, I know, but it's my dyslexia. I can't, it's hard for me to have a linear, I kind of bounce all over the place. But it's pretty obvious to me that the way in which mathematics interacts with the physical realm is technology. There isn't a direct causal relationship between mathematics. I don't have ADHD. That's different. That's way different than dyslexia, Miss Page. Yeah, the causal relationship between the physical realm and mathematics is obviously technology. It's not the workings of the physical realm. The workings of the physical realm are not caused by mathematical equations. There's a direct correlation because they operate on the same fundamental system. They are generated by the same fundamental system, but they're in parallel. And this is why they look so they are so correlated that it looks like there's a causal relationship, but there isn't. The only causal relationship is through symbol and through technology. And technology is fucking everything up. So therefore, mathematics is incorrect. The entire thing. It may be self-correct, but the whole thing as a whole is wrong. But the fact that it can be correct within itself, that makes people think that it's working and that it's truth. Hi, Callie. See, defending myself with that ADHD thing, I believe that dyslexic people have the ability to see the whole more than the parts of the whole. It's difficult to focus in on the parts of the whole and it's far easier to see the whole for someone who's dyslexic, I believe. Who is the mathematician you have in mind? Edward Frenkel. I think his last name is Frenkel. I had high hopes for him because he was on the Kurt's theory of everything a few months ago, and he was questioning the basis of mathematics, right? He was questioning, and he's one of the top 10, I think, considered top 10 mathematicians in the world. And he is questioning the roots of mathematics itself. So I thought, well, maybe there's hope here. Well, I contacted him and he hasn't contacted me back. I even emailed him some shit. He was actually gave a couple of talks in science and non-duality, that conference, and I was there for one of those things too. I was a no-name giving a little presentation to hardly anyone. But he was a main speaker in two of these so he's on the right path. Although not he shouldn't follow non-duality, because that's neo-Advaita bullshit. He should just follow Advaita Vedanta, which is the real deal. Maybe it still needs to work on it, or maybe he just rejected it completely because he's a mathematician, right? And he's saying how great math is. So it's tough for a mathematician, even though intuitively he has this intuition that something's not right here at the most fundamental level of what we're doing. When that problem at the most fundamental level is showing that the whole fucking thing is wrong, that's too much, right? It's just too much. It's like Neo trying to jump from one building to the next. It takes maybe some time to develop your skills to jump from one building to the next, but he can't make that jump right now. But he's questioning the purpose and the base of all mathematics. And if he were to say something, people would listen. Even if it's saying the same thing I am, people won't fucking listen to me, right? Mathematicians won't, for sure. Only you brilliant people. What I learned from listening to some of his interviews is that math itself is kind of like a Rubik's Cube. When they say we've solved this great math problem, well, that's a problem that's just within math. It has nothing to do with the physical realm. It doesn't, there's this new revelation that helps us understand the human condition more. No, there's a problem within math, within the structure of mathematics that we haven't figured out. And then they come to this great realization, but it's still all within the constructs of the mathematical system. It's just a Rubik's Cube. And they just love having fun making different patterns out of the fucking Rubik's Cube. It's a puzzle. Mathematics is a puzzle that generates its own puzzling. So that's how it distracts mathematicians from focusing on the stillness that is the self between the thoughts, because it's brilliant, because it somehow captures a certain type of human consciousness, and they can't break out of it. It's just so much fun engaging in this puzzle, but it leads nowhere. It's just mental masturbation and never coming. Well, maybe they have little orgasms, but it leads nowhere. It's just, this person is the greatest mathematician ever because they've solved some problem within mathematics. And then you can just go, well, okay, now what? How does that lessen my suffering? It doesn't. It's just interesting. If he can get there without touching in stillness, Professors generally stay quite busy. Yeah. The only one I know who does touch in with stillness, at least some, is Donald Hoffman. Yeah. And God bless Donald, but he's engaging in the same thing. Like, I don't understand. Like, he even recognizes what he's doing isn't going to solve anything. So I, I've sent him my stuff too, of course, and no response because my stuff negates his stuff. It just does. Fundamentally, it doesn't matter what metaphor you're developing, it's still, if it's based on mathematics, it's going to be fucking wrong. Like, it, it, whatever, man. No, Donald doesn't get back to me. And that's probably what's keeping Donald Hoffman from his enlightenment, right? He's halfway in the spiritual practice because he meditates. He says that he meditates a lot, up to 3 hours a day, just on stillness. But this drive for him to come up with this theory is Maya's play for him personally to keep him away from his enlightenment. And people who don't want to be convinced, who don't want to see the truth, it doesn't matter how precisely you present the argument, they won't see it. And he will come across this same thing. Even though it is logically and mathematically sound, people, mathematicians themselves, won't admit it. Just like he's not admitting what I'm revealing to him is that his theory will be, well, he knows his theory will be incomplete. I'm not sure if academia is structured in a way to produce someone who is embedded in that structure can realize this truth. Yes. And that's exactly why it's someone like me that's outside of the entire system that hasn't been taught, right? I haven't learned anything. No one's taught me anything. Everything that I've learned has come from my own observations and my own experience. So it maybe has to be completely outside of academia. The truth will never make its way into academia, even if one of these really well-known academics like Donald or Edward comes, sees the light and says, this has all been incorrect. This is why it never ends, is because the entire scientific endeavor is incorrect. The whole fucking 450 fucking years of it, we went the wrong way. Of course, even if someone very prevalent and well known and respected in academia, if they said that, they'd be shunned and probably kicked out of academia. They would go through the same process of being ignored and then laughed at and then fought, right? So I'm just going to do my thing, and whoever is ready for it will accept it. I'm not going to try to push it on people anymore. again, it's just like a cult, but this cult is everyone. If everyone around you, entire universities, everyone around you is in this cult, and only one person in your entire life has come out and said things counter to what the cult leader has said, well, good fucking luck trying to deprogram that, right? It's going to be really, really, really difficult for someone who's been programmed for decades to accept that the scientific process is valid and leading to some sort of truth. I'm finding out how difficult it is. Just ignored, 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 ignored. Well, when Roy Dobson gets out of the way and tries and stops trying to do anything, yeah, it works out. Like you keep telling me, it's all for me. Everything that I see, my vision and my understanding of the world is for me, and I appreciate it because the vision that I have is kind of like the fucking oracle. I just see everything. And it's amazing. And I don't need other people to agree with me that there's a freaking lake out there because some people can't see the lake, metaphorically speaking. And that doesn't mean that the lake isn't there. It just means that they can't see what I see, even though it's completely obvious to me. Mm-hmm. And at that point, when it's so obvious, right? Like this whole the fundamental model of reality and the number system being a message and how that explains why it is that math appears to be both discovered and invented at the same time. How that is so completely, that's the lake to me, right? Is that, well, this solves the greatest philosophical question, but they don't even have it worded correctly because they don't understand it, right? They don't see what I see. So the question for mathematicians is mathematics discovered or invented? And that's completely the wrong question. The question, obviously, if they're asking that question, then mathematics contains both simultaneously discovered qualities and invented qualities, right? So why don't they ask the question, why does mathematics appear to have both discovered and invented qualities? Why isn't that the question? So if that's the question, then my theory that the number system is a message and that mathematics is the incorrect, ongoing incorrect interpretation of that message, that resolves the question why it appears that way. So that's the fucking lake. Someone in grade 6 can follow this, right? But a mathematician who has an IQ of over mine, over 132, can't see what I see. So at that point, you have to say that either I'm deluded, basically crazy, deluded, can't see reality, or the mathematician who can't see the lake is completely deluded and can't see reality because it's that fundamental and that obvious. And my stance is, well, if we get to that point, then we have to say, well, whose life, whose subjective experience is better, right? Because to me, someone who has a worldview, a vision of reality that's closer to reality would naturally experience more happiness and less suffering. That seems reasonable to me. That would be the guide. So let's ask the mathematician, well, what's your life like? Because my life is fucking perfect. Is yours? That to me is the final equation to who's right, who is the lake there or isn't it, right? I see the lake and the lake is real because I don't suffer. You can't see the lake and you suffer because you can't see the lake and you're in a state of delusion. Simplicity and elegance, that's truth. And even the mathematicians and physicists would admit that simplicity and elegance is the path of truth. But if it's so simple that it doesn't require 9 years of advanced schooling, then it can't be true because I've spent $300,000 on my schooling and devoted so much of my energy and time into this. And to have it revealed as all being false, tough pill to swallow. Tough red pill to swallow. Just go back to campus and get some more blue ones. Yes, that's great. They miss the lake for the water molecule. You keep it up, and your analogies are almost going to be as good as mine. Well, I think there's wood to put on the fire and maybe some NFL to watch. So I'm going to call this one. My middle name's not, uh, yes, to be frank about things. All right. Take it easy. Have a good Christmas and eat lots of turkey and get bloated and sit around and do all the fun holiday stuff. We'll see you next week. End.